The Honorable Mr. Professor Ahmad Muzaki, MAG Grade Deep C MPhil PhD, as Rector of UIN Sunan Ampel, Surabaya. Dear Honorable Mr. Dr. Muhammad Kurjum MAG, as Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Humanities. Dear Honorable, our beloved professors and lecturers from Arts and Humanities Faculty. Dear Honorable Speaker from BRIN, Mr. Professor Ahmad Najib Burhani, PhD. Speaker from Aliyah University, India, Mr. Muhammad Reyes, PhD. Speaker from UIN Sunan Ampel, Surabaya, Mr. Dr. Muhammad Khadafi, MSI. Dear Honorable all of the committees, thank you very much for your well-prepared this international seminar. And also, we will not forget our proud to the Honorable all of the participants. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
حمدا وشكرا لك يا الله صلاة وسلاما عليك يا حبيب الله وعلى آلك وأصحابك ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم القيامة أما بعد. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let us praise to the presence of God, the merciful God, who has bestowed our pleasures for the health, the opportunities, and the happiness we feel today. Without His mercy, it is impossible for all of us to enjoy this international seminar. Salawat and salam remain forward to the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who has been fighting for Islam and guiding us on the path of Allah Almighty. It is great honor for me, Naufal Alana Putra, to welcome you to the opening ceremony of the international seminar with them, updating historical narrative of Muslim minority, past, present, and future, held by the Faculty of Arts and Humanities, UIN Sunan Ampel, Surabaya. Well, precious audience, please allow me as the host to read the schedule of the program this morning. The first, opening. Second, tilawah. The third, sing the national anthem and hymn of UINSA. Fourth, chanting prayers. Fifth, take picture together. Sixth, the explanation from speakers about historical narrative of Muslim minority. And the last, closing. Now, the first agenda is opening. Let's start our seminar with the first surah of Al-Quran. Al-Fatihah, begin. Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. The next agenda is tilawah. Dear Miss Maya Rizky Fatul Aziza, the screen is yours.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور الذي خلق سبع سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير صدق الله مولانا العظيم.
Sadaqallahul Azim. Sadaqallahu Nabiyul Karim. Thank you for Miss Maya. We will have the singing of the national anthem, Indonesia Raya, and hymn of Sunan Ampel, Surabaya. Dear Mr. Juma, the screen is yours.
Kepada sang merah putih, hormat! Kan!
Janalah dari pandu rakyatku semua Allah hanya bangun aku perlu serah yang kucinta Indonesia berputar berputar berputar
Thank you for Mr. Juma. Now, we would like to invite Dr. Imam Ibn Hajar MAG to lead us pray together. Dear Dr. Imam Ibn Hajar MAG, the screen is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad wa sallim waradu tabaraka wa ta'ala an kulli sahabati rasulillah alhamdulillahi bil amin. Hamdan syakirin, hamdan na'imin, hamdan yuafi ni'amaka mazidah. Ya Rabbana lakal hamd kama yanbaghi li jalalatil ma'alim sultanik. Rabbana innana sami'na munadiyan yunadi lil iman an aminu bi rabbikum fa amanna. Rabbana faghfir lana dhunubana wa kaffir 'anna sayyi'atina wa tawaffana ma'al abrar. Rabbana la tu'akhidna in nasina aw akhtana. Rabbana wa la tahmil 'alaina isran kama hamaltahu 'alal ladzina min qablina. Rabbana wa la tuhammilna ma la taqata lana bih wa'fu 'anna waghfir lana warhamna. Anta maulana fansurna 'alal qaumil kafirin. Allahumma inna nas'aluka al-huda wat-tuqa wal-'afafa wal-ghina. ونسألك رضاك والجنة ونعوذ بك من سخطك والنار. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من الهم والحزن ونعوذ بك من العجز والكسل ونعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل ونعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال ونعوذ بك من علم لا ينفع ومن قلب لا يخشع ومن نفس لا تشبع ومن دعوة لا يستجاب لها. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد والحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Thank you to Mr. Ibn Hajar. Before we start our agenda, let me guess you for taking a picture. I hope all of you can open your video or camera now. Okay, guys. Ready? I will count until 3. From slide 1. Let's smile. 1, 2, 3. Next. Slide 2. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, now is the session we have been waiting for. We are fortunate to have Moment expert today, and the moderator will guide us to listen to the lecture and discuss more in the question and answer session. No need to wait long. It is now my pleasure to introduce the moderator, Mr. Dr. Nyong Eka Teguh Iman Santosa, MPhil I, as a lecturer of History and Islamic Civilization, Department, the Faculty of Arts and Humanities, UIN Sunan Ampel, Surabaya. Dear Dr. Nyong Eka Teguh, MPhil I, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mas Naufal. I will confirm first all the speakers. In which they are already joining with us. Mr. Yas, are you with us already?
Yes, I am. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Professor Najib, are you with us?
Yes, I am here, but still fixing my computer a bit. Just turn it off. What you call it, like unintendedly.
Okay, thank you. And of course, Mr. Khadafi is already with us today. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalam ala sayyid ibni abdillah Rasulillah Muhammad al-Mustafa nabil umil ladzi la yantiqu anil hawa in huwa illa wahyu yuha. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the seminar hosted at Department of History and Islamic Civilization, part of the Faculty of Art and Humanities, UIN, State Islamic University, Sunan Ampel of Surabaya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Young Etis, and it is my pleasure to serve as a moderator for this seminar on updating historical narratives of Muslim minorities, past, present, and future. And today is Saturday, 24th September 2022. Yeah, so this seminar is held at the proper time, because September is known as the month to remember. Yeah, it's like a song sung by Barry White entitled September and mentioned in the lyrics, September, remember, September when I first met you, remember. So September is the month to remember. Yeah, I think the seminar is held at a proper time. And the song is definitely beautiful, and I think my voice personally had ruined it, but in hopes that you'll never forget this lovely day and absolutely the seminar. First of all, may I briefly introduce the all panelists to you. And we are so lucky because we have three distinguished speakers who will share their knowledge, experiences, as well as their insights related to the topic we will discuss today. Please, the PIC to share their CV on the screen. Please help me. Bisa dibantu, Mas? Okay. Yeah, the file is shared in the group. You can open it. Okay. Firstly, we have Dr. Muhammad Khadafi, MSc, and I'm sure most of you already know him very well. He's my senior colleague at the Department of History and Islamic Civilization, and he himself was formerly head of this department and is now the Vice Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Humanities. So congratulations, sir, on your promotion. And he was born in Lumajang, November 29, 1972, if I'm not mistaken. And after completing his senior high school and before taking higher education, he had attended a pesantren education in Pelosok, Kediri. He is the holder of bachelor, master, and doctoral degrees in anthropology from Airlangga University, Surabaya. And he served as the manager of the Santri magazine, operated by Rabita Ma'ahid Islamiyah, owned by the National Board of Nahdlatul Ulama from 1996 to 2002. And he was also a fellow of international program at Australia National University. From my personal knowledge, he has involved in massive field research on the Islamic history and cultural anthropology, and is actively involved in many community projects in East Java province, Indonesia. So thank you, Pak Khadafi, for being here with us this morning.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, and next we have Mr. Muhammad Riaz, PhD. He is an assistant professor at the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Alia University, Kolkata, India. He was fellow of the study of U.S. Institute, SUSI, for scholars on religious pluralism, hosted at Seattle University in 2021. He had a long record of fieldwork particularly in the issue of India-Afghanistan power relations. He received his PhD in international studies from Jamia Millia Islamia, Pakistan, India. Yeah. He holds 2 master degrees, MA in convergent journalism and MPhil in international studies. Interesting. From my personal knowledge, he is also a vocal social activist and a public speaker in addressing and advocating civil rights and social justice for minorities in India. Thank you, Mr. Rias, for joining us and being here with us this morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, and the last speaker, we have Professor Ahmad Najib Burhani, PhD. He is research professor and chairman of the Institute of Social Sciences and Humanities at the National Research and Innovation Agency, BRIN, Badan Riset dan Inovasi Nasional Indonesia. And previously, of course, he was the director of the Research Center for Society and Culture at LIPI, Jakarta. He received his PhD in religious studies from the University of California, Santa Barbara, USA in 2013. And in the same year, he won the Professor Charles Wendell Memorial Award from UCSB for his academic achievement in the field of Islamic and Middle Eastern studies. He also received his 2 master degrees, Master of Science in Social Research Methods and Statistics from the University of Manchester, UK, and Master of Art in Islamic Studies from Leiden University, Netherlands. And after returning from his abroad intellectual journey to Indonesia, he was selected as a member of the elite group, Indonesian Young Scientists, part of the Indonesian Academy of Sciences, Akademi Ilmu Pengetahuan Indonesia. He's also very productive in writing. He has published many books and journal articles. So thank you, Professor Najib, for giving your time for this seminar. Okay, dear all participants, this hour seminar will mainly talk about historical narratives of Muslim minority. And we mean by the concept of Muslim minority here is possibly not only referred to those Muslims who are small in numbers within non-Muslim majority countries, such as Muslims in India, but Muslim minority could also refer to those Muslims who are small in number within Muslim majority countries, such as Shia or Ahmadiyya in Indonesia. So today we will examine how Muslim minorities in certain contexts were facing or are dealing with or will anticipate historical challenges, threats, or opportunities related to their distinct status or their unique identities as minority, and how their dynamics and changes have happened through history. We'll examine and explore by our speakers and then discuss together by all participants. And I'm sure that we will learn a lot from these scholars through their presentation in this seminar today. We acknowledge their inspiring academic and professional achievements from the brief CV I have read. So before moving to the presentation, we expect the audience to give each speaker an opportunity to fully deliver his lecture. So please be patient and mute all your microphones. The session of discussion will be open after all speakers ending their lectures. Any comments or questions during the presentation are only allowed through chat box. And I will read it in the session of discussion, or I will invite you to asking directly to the panelists. Okay, now we come to the time for listening to the lectures. We have our first speaker, Dr. Muhammad Khadafi, and then followed by Mr. Muhammad Rias, PhD, and then Professor Ahmad Najib Burhani, PhD. And we give each speaker has about 30 to 40 minutes to deliver his presentation. Firstly, to Dr. Khadafi, the screen, we give it to you. Screen is now yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nyong. Okay, I want to say thanks to Mr. Nyong, head of Islamic History and Civilization Department, and all of the committee who preparing this event very good, yeah, and all of participants, and my sincerely to speaker, Bapak Profesor Najib Burhani, and also Mr. Muhammad Rias PhD, yeah. And of course to our teacher, para profesor in our department, ya. Semoga Bapak Ibu semua sehat semua. Okay, I will beginning this presentation with the membacakan, ya, to reading a verse on the Al-Quran, ya, surat Ar-Ra'd ayat 19, ya. This is very important, yeah, very important to all the Muslim community, and we have related with our tema in this morning. A'udzubillahi minasyaitonirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Afaman ya'lamu annama unzila ilaika mir rabbikal haqqu kaman huwa a'ma. Innama yatadzakkaru ulul albab. Alladzina yufuna bi ahdillahi wa la yanquduna al-mitsaq. Walladzina yasiluna ma amarallahu bihi ayyusala wa yakhsawna rabbahum wa yakhafuna su'al hisab. Jadi this verse is very important for Muslim, yeah, because it been an everlasting spiritual covenant with Allah, which should also be to the category of ulul albab. Jadi saya akan mendeliverikan, saya akan menyampaikan ini dalam dua bahasa aja, ya, karena because our participant mostly from our student, so I think it's very hard to them to understand what we are talking this morning. Okay, we start from the concept of what the meaning of majority and minority. Yeah, I have a problem with my Zoom. I can show my PowerPoint. Bisakah dibantu ini? Saya tidak bisa. Okay. Majority in the concept of social science is the social group considered to have the most power in particular place, and sometimes the most member. So kelompok mayoritas itu adalah ada semacam mengacu pada semacam grup gitu, ya, atau kelompok masyarakat yang memiliki kekuatan cukup besar sekaligus secara kuantitatif gitu, ya. Itu ada dalam satu ikatan masyarakat yang memiliki banyak kelompok gitu, ya. On the other hand, a minority is any category of people distinguished by either physical or cultural difference that a society has subordinated. Sementara itu, minority itu seringkali dipahami sebagai kelompok masyarakat yang mengalami posisi subordinat karena secara kuantitatif itu mereka sangat kecil gitu, ya. Tetapi konsep majority and minority is not solely related to quantity, but it also related to the structure of power relation who dominated whom. Siapa ya? Jadi konsep majority and minority itu tidak selalu terkait dengan kuantitas saja, tetapi juga terkait dengan struktur dari political power gitu ya, social power, economical power. Itu seringkali menjadikan isu-isu majority and minority itu menjadi kabur, ya. Oke. The phenomenon of minority itu have a negative impact for the long untuk sejauh peradaban berjalan gitu ya. Negative impact itu, the negative impact is subordinated. Jadi subordinated itu dimulai dari menempatkan minority group to second level in the system of social relation. Nah, if the phenomena subordinated ini berjalan ya, berjalan terus dalam waktu yang lama gitu ya, maka akan memunculkan rise the phenomena of marginalization. Jadi peminggiran masyarakat. Setelah subordinasi itu begitu mapan di masyarakat, biasanya akan muncul apa yang disebut marginalization. Jadi peminggiran, semuanya dikuasai oleh majority group. Majority group will have access to capital, all the capital, political capital, economical capital, social capital, cultural capital, and then subordinated group or the minority don't have the access for that for the capital. Yeah. So after the marginalization, usually the political progress for the minority is isolation. Jadi setelah dimarginalize gitu ya, kelompok-kelompok minoritas itu biasanya akan diisolasi secara politik, secara ekonomi, secara budaya. It's like China's in Indonesia, yeah. It's like China's in Indonesia in or a New Order era, ketika para penguasa politik di masa Orde Baru menempatkan kelompok Tionghoa atau orang-orang Cina, orang-orang Cina itu dalam konteks kultural yang dipinggirkan, yang diisolasi. Agamanya dilarang, Konghucu dilarang, ya, kemudian bahasanya juga dilarang. Nah, ini adalah satu proses isolasi. Even is not happen in economical area, ya. Meskipun ini tidak terjadi dalam aspek dalam area ekonomi, karena justru di dalam area ekonomi the community, the Chinese community have orang menyebut memiliki hak yang memiliki privilege in economical area because they have relation with the elite politic to make some of corruption untuk melakukan beberapa kegiatan yang bersifat koruptif, ya. Oke. Setelah proses after the isolation, biasanya akan muncul yang namanya embargo. Embargo ini kepada kelompok-kelompok minoritas, even kalau in this moment, artinya dalam in this di zaman ini sudah tentu jarang ya ada embargo kepada kelompok minority, tetapi fakta ini pernah dialami dalam sejarah, ya. Dalam sejarah itu pernah dialami oleh beberapa kelompok masyarakat gitu ya. yang puncaknya adalah ketika subordinate, marginalization, isolation, embargo sudah berjalan begitu lama dalam satu proses politik, in the political process ya, maka yang muncul adalah genosid, adalah proses genosid. Ini adalah puncak ya, the top of negative impact of yang bisa dialami oleh kelompok fenomena minority ini juga memiliki positive impact ya. Proses-proses kultural yang terjadi di masyarakat in minority group rise their creativity, integrity, loyalty, challenge, passion gitu ya. Jadi kelompok-kelompok minoritas itu justru ketika mereka tertekan, mereka akan memunculkan satu creativity, suatu ikatan integritas antar kelompok gitu yang kuat ya, loyalty pada kelompok, kemudian menganggap itu sebagai satu tantangan, passion. We can see this phenomena in the kelompok-kelompok ini ya, kelompok-kelompok minoritas di Timur Tengah seperti Yahudi gitu ya, Israel gitu ya, yang sebenarnya mereka minoritas, tapi begitu mereka mengalami proses itu, mereka memunculkan satu kreativitas membangun jaringan kekuasaan politik ya dengan negara-negara lain, sehingga dia meskipun minority di Timur Tengah, tapi pada akhirnya mereka menjadi majority dalam konteks power politik sampai sekarang. Ya. Oke, bagaimana fenomena Islamic minority? Apa sebab kemunculan fenomena minoritas Islam misalkan? Ya, tentu saja kita punya historical background, ya, karena faktor sejarah. Nah, kelompok-kelompok minoritas itu selalu always have a historical context, ya, sehingga kita bisa melihat bagaimana kelompok-kelompok minoritas dalam masyarakat kita itu selalu merujuk, merecall historical experience mereka, ya, sehingga tidak mudah melupakan penderitaan itu, ya, apa yang mereka alami, subordinasi, isolasi sampai genosid itu tak bisa dilupakan. Tidak bisa melupakan itu, sehingga orang Israel misalkan, orang Yahudi yang mengalami genosida oleh Jerman misalkan, oleh Nazi misalkan, itu sampai sekarang masih menyimpan memori tentang genosida itu, sehingga memunculkan kreativitas bagi mereka di all area, untuk di semua bidang kehidupan, untuk melakukan revenge gitu ya, untuk melakukan balas dendam sebenarnya. Dan korbannya sekali lagi, and the victim is Islamic community. Ya, bukan kelompok Barat, meskipun ada Nazi gitu ya, tapi Nazi tetap dilarang, tetapi the real victim is Islamic community. Ya. Yang kedua adalah and the second is migration. Jadi minority group itu rise by migration. Jadi adanya migrasi dari negara-negara mayoritas Islam ke negara-negara minoritas Islam, itu memunculkan di negara-negara majority non-Muslim itu kelompok-kelompok minoritas Islam. Ya. Nah, ini juga menjadi problem secara keagamaan, secara kultural, gitu ya, secara politik. Apa yang terjadi di negara-negara Barat, di Amerika, di Eropa, even in Amerika, a Muslim have very good growth, ya, sangat berkembang, ya. Tetapi memunculkan the new phenomena tentang bagaimana Islam relation between Islam. Jadi Muslim community with the other Muslim community in America, because America we know America is a liberal, have a liberal politik, so ketika di Amerika itu ada kebebasan yang luar biasa, maka muncullah keragaman ekspresi tentang Islam. Nah, itu juga menjadi satu problem minority. Yang ketiga, apa yang memunculkan the rise of Islamic minorities, political revolution. Jadi perubahan tatanan politik is happen in India. Ya. Di India, Islam di masa lalu menjadi penguasa di India. Tapi setelah ada revolusi politik, kemudian orang Islam tidak lagi memegang kendali politik, ya, maka di India sekarang Islam to be a minority group. Dalam sejarahnya pernah menjadi penguasa di India. Nah, ini salah satu sebab kenapa Islam kelompok-kelompok minoritas Islam itu muncul di negara-negara yang majority non-Muslim. Yang keempat adalah religious conversion. Jadi perpindahan agama di negara-negara non-Muslim. Kita tahu di negara-negara Barat itu mulai tumbuh kesadaran spiritualitas, ya. Ketika tumbuh kesadaran spiritualitas itu, maka perpindahan agama, religious conversion itu menjadi sesuatu yang sangat mudah terjadi, gitu ya, yang sangat mungkin terjadi, sehingga muncullah tadi itu komunitas-komunitas Islam minoritas di negara-negara non-Muslim. Dan yang terakhir dari fenomena kemunculan minorities, Islamic minorities ini adalah berkembangnya kelompok-kelompok yang berbasis sektarian, ya. Jadi kelompok-kelompok agama di berbagai negara Muslim ataupun non-Muslim itu selalu ada yang majority group, ada yang minority group, is like a Sunni and Syiah, gitu ya, or Sunni and Ahmadiyah in Indonesia. So Islamic minority itu sangat luas sekali, ya. Jika bisa menderivasi isu ini ke dalam isu-isu yang lainnya. Oke. Nah, dalam sejarah, ya, dalam sejarah awal Islamic history, ya, sejarah awal Islam, kasus sejarah di awal kemunculan Islam itu, as a minority at that time, Muslim had to leave their home. This is and move to suburb of Mecca. There was not allowed to interact of them their support group from Bani Hasim, ya. Jadi di awal sejarah Islam kita pernah mengalami proses tadi itu, ya, negative impact karena posisi yang minoritas itu. Kita pernah mengalami embargo politik, embargo ekonomi, embargo sosial, gitu ya. Dilarang berinteraksi sampai terpinggirkan di pinggiran kota Mekah yang tidak subur sama sekali. Tidak mendapatkan dukungan kecuali dari Bani Hasim, itu pun tidak semuanya, gitu ya. Kemudian selama 3 tahun umat Islam itu mengalami proses embargo yang luar biasa. Meskipun belum terjadi pada fase genosid, ya, tetapi sudah sangat bahaya. Bukan hanya diusir dari rumah mereka, ya. Muslim minority pada masa itu juga dilarang berhubungan dengan kerabat yang belum masuk Islam, kemudian dilarang melakukan ikatan perkawinan, dan semuanya mengalami proses yang berat saat itu. And menariknya, ya, yang menarik itu adalah this boycott announcement was hung on the Ka'bah, gitu ya. Jadi traktat atau perjanjian yang digantung di Ka'bah itu menjadi semacam simbol, ya. Ka'bah itu kan semacam simbol kesucian orang Ka'bah, gitu ya. Orang Arab maksud saya. Dan itu menjadi penting secara religius, ya. Menjadi penting secara keyakinan religius. Nah, ketika traktat atau perjanjian itu, naskah pemboikotan itu kemudian rusak karena dimakan rayap atau semut, gitu ya, maka berhentilah proses intimidasi itu, diskriminasi itu berhenti, ya. Itu menariknya, taruh di Ka'bah, ya, kemudian Ka'bah sebagai simbol keyakinan orang Arab, gitu ya, sehingga tidak ada yang berani melawan itu. Karena itulah bagaimana berhentinya boikot itu, ya, boikot atau embargo itu, ya, terhadap umat Islam itu lebih bernuansa spiritual, ya, daripada politik sebenarnya. Karena apa? Karena Nabi sebagai simbol orang suci, ya, sebagai simbol orang suci itu menerima kabar dari Jibril bahwa naskah itu sudah rusak karena dimakan oleh rayap atau oleh semut, ya. Karena itulah kemudian menjadi menarik di dalam ayat-ayat yang terkait dengan fenomena boikot atau embargo terhadap umat Islam itu, kita dilarang kita orang Islam itu dilarang untuk melakukan balas dendam, melakukan hal itu. Jangankan melakukan itu, berteman dengan orang yang melakukan itu saja dilarang. Nah, ini menariknya. Karena itu berakhirnya boikot, berakhirnya embargo itu justru merupakan peristiwa spiritual ketimbang peristiwa politik. Nah, itu yang terjadi pada masa itu, ya, sebagaimana nanti ayat yang pertama tadi saya sebut itu, ya. Jadi kita itu lebih terikat dengan sebuah perjanjian spiritual dengan Tuhan, agar akhlak politik kita itu menjadi lebih baik ke depan. Nah, saat ini, ya, kasus minority case arise as a result of a migration process. Banyaknya kasus ini karena kasus migrasi dari negara-negara majority Muslim majority to non-Muslim majority state in West or in Middle Asia, China, gitu ya. Kemudian in Japan, in Australia, itu semuanya karena kasus migration. Apakah karena student, karena mereka belajar, gitu ya, atau karena yang lain, karena pergerakan dari international worker atau pekerja internasional. Yang kedua adalah religion growth diversity, karena kelompok-kelompok aliran keagamaan yang semakin banyak itu menjadikan saat ini kelompok-kelompok minoritas itu juga bermunculan di mana-mana. And differences in political orientation, jadi ada perbedaan persaingan politik seperti yang terjadi di Irak, gitu ya, ketika kelompok minoritas menguasai politik di sana, kemudian terjadi revolusi, Saddam Hussein digulingkan. And then kaum Syiah yang majority itu berkuasa, ya. Nah, ini menimbulkan kasus-kasus minority Muslim. And the future minority problem in cyberspace will be appear more open and intensive. Nah, ini ke depan di masa depan itu masalah minoritas Islam minoritas akan semakin terbuka dan intensif terjadi di ruang maya. Ini sesuatu yang tentu harus diantisipasi ya. Kita harus mengantisipasi bagaimana kemudian ruang-ruang di cyberspace itu tidak lagi menampakkan secara secara brutal gitu ya, proses-proses pertarungan dan 5 proses tadi, subordinasi, kemudian sampai kepada genosida gitu ya, itu tidak terjadi melalui cyberspace. Karena bagaimanapun juga kita akan masyarakat Muslim, maksud saya, itu kita akan merugi dengan sendirinya jika kemudian kita tidak mampu mencegah proses-proses ini yang luar biasa terjadi. Apalagi sekarang di Indonesia kita memasuki masa-masa politik pilpres gitu ya, pemilu yang saya yakin mulai bulan depan ini ya itu sudah mulai terjadi politisasi agama. Dan itu sekali lagi maka kelompok-kelompok minoritas, apakah itu Muslim minority ataukah kelompok-kelompok etnis minority in Indonesia akan mengalami posisi yang sulit jika kita tidak mampu mengendalikan isu-isu ini. Saya kira itu saja Pak Nyong, terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Pak Khadafi, for an interesting talk. And it gives us a general sketch and overview of minority conceptualization, particularly seen from an Islamic perspective. The audience, you firstly elaborate the concept of ulul albab as our theological references for intellectual endeavor in understanding this topic. He also gave an emphasis and highlight that the concept majority and minority is not always about the number, but also including the issues of structural relations and power influence. And he also explained historical examples of how Muslims were being the minority in certain places, and mentioned also some historical driven, such as migration, religio-cultural diversity, and also politics. And Pak Khadafi also anticipates some possibilities that will be faced by Muslim minority in the future. Thank you, Dr. Khadafi. As a reminder, participants can text comments and questions through chat box, and I will read it in the session of the discussion, or I will invite you to directly asking to the panelists. Now to Dr. Reyes, we welcome you to present your lecture.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and I thank Dr. Nyong and the organizers for inviting me. This is first time, although virtually, I will be speaking at a program in Indonesia. And so I'm really thankful to Dr. Nyong and to everyone associated. I'll just,
Doctor, we're glad to have you here.
I'll just share my screen. Give me just like 1 minute. Okay, I hope the screen is visible. If someone can confirm. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, thank you so much. So the speaker before me, Professor Khadafi, very well explained the concept of majority and minority. I broadly agree with everything he said. I would just like to add one thing before I proceed to my presentation, that this concept of majority and minority is a very modern construct also in many ways, in the sense that we started talking more about majority and minorities once we had this concept of nationality and ethnicity became more predominant, which is like after the Westphalian system of the state in the 17th century onwards, and then 18th century, and in especially now when we talk about democracy, where number become very important. So this concept of majority or minority has become more like a contentious and debatable subject. Otherwise, in history, often most rulers were actually in minority. Almost everywhere in the empire system, what mattered more was the power structure, as you pointed out. The other point is, historically in the eastern part of the world, especially in Asia and Arab, you'll notice that people were known more by their cities, which place they came from, or the tribe. And so majority minority, like say, let's take the example of India. So today when we talk of India, we mean a particular geographical map, but this map as India, politically, did it ever exist, is a debatable subject, because there were so many small states, and we have language and social and cultural divisions. So that's about majority and minority. My topic broadly is also same, although I will be talking more about Indian experience. But before going to the Indian experience, the majority minority concept, I guess, is already has been deliberated. So beyond those, I would like to I'm not going into details of these terms, but I'm just dropping these terms here for the benefit of the students, especially that what I'm going to talk now should be seen in these broadly in these, like these concepts should be kept in mind. So this concept of narratives, the concept of meta narratives or grand narratives as we call it, the issue of ideology, the agenda setting. So history writing itself is a continuous process, and history, although we write and study about past, is more about present and more about how we see our future. So history writing is a continuous process, actually, writing and rewriting. And so the agenda setting of the rulers of the time. So the Karl Marx famously said the idea of the ruling class, that concept, and how history writing is more about establishing hegemony. All the ruling forces want to establish their hegemony. Also, Professor Khadafi talked about this in cyberspace, how majority minority issue is going to be aggravated. In the cyberspace today, we live in the post-truth era, and in the post-truth era, where more than the fact as we know it, what matters is what people believe in, the emotions. All right. So in that context, the history, like say, again, I can give example from India, but maybe in the history textbook is completely different from the general understanding. Like say, if you have seen some of these Indian films, which is supposedly based on historical characters, but may have no relation with textbooks, so to say. So we need to keep that also in mind. I'm not going into details, as I said. I'm just touching on these topics, and we can come back if we have time. This is what I was talking about, what Karl Marx said, actually, the idea of the ruling class, and that how the idea of the ruling class in every epoch or in every period has been the ruling ideas. So that is very important phrase that we should keep in mind. Ideology, I already mentioned. Hegemony. Also, we should keep in mind Orientalism, the concept given by Edward Said, and then we have now something called, like there have been revisions of what he said, the re-Orientalism as we know it, or in Indian context we call it Hindu Orientalism. I'll elaborate a bit on this towards the end of my presentation. Then the clash of civilization, I'm sure most of you must have heard this term, Islamophobia, the concept of good Muslim versus bad Muslim, which Mahmoud Mamdani talked of. So once again, as I said, I'm not going into the details. I'm sure most of the students must have heard these terms. So I just dropped these terms so when I'm talking, you know in which context I'm talking about. So updating historical narratives of Muslim minorities, past, present, and future. I'll talk a little bit about past of Muslims in India, a little bit about present, and then just hint at the possible future challenges or opportunities that we have. Now, coming back to India now, there is this general notion that Muslims came to India with invasion. So there's this very famous 8th century, that during 8th century, during the Umayyad dynasty, Mir Qasim came to the northern parts, so northwestern parts of what is now Pakistan, actually, in the Multan region, and conquered some parts of that area. But local rulers have stopped them, and it was only by end of the 12th and 13th century that Muslims, invaders, so to say, came to and conquered and established states with Delhi Sultanate and all. I'm sure some students who have studied world history might have heard. But I would like to point here that this is a very wrong notion. Why I say this is because Muslims in India, at least some, have been there since the time of the Prophet. I have just put 2 photographs here. This is one mosque. In local language, we call it Garwada Masjid or mosque. This is in the state of Gujarat, the province from where our current Prime Minister Narendra Modi comes. And this is another mosque, with Cheraman Mosque, is in South India, in the state of Kerala. The region geographically is known as Malabar region. Now, both these mosques are in port towns, ancient port towns. This area is still quite active. Some of you might have heard about Kerala. This port, although Gujarat is one of the most important state economically and trade-wise, and there are many ports there, but this particular port is not in use. But this is an old port town, and both these places have mosques which are believed to be, of course, this structure. This is very old structure. This one is relatively, the second one is relatively new structure, as you can see. But this is also quite old, actually, many centuries old. But both these mosques are believed to be built in 7th century. In fact, believed to have been built at the time of the Prophet, when Prophet was probably alive. Okay, so early first half of the 7th century, that's when both the mosques are believed. In fact, the first mosque you see, it is not, its Qibla is not facing Kaaba Sharif or Makkah. Its Qibla is somewhere, like geographically, it's somewhere between Jerusalem and Makkah. But many historians, there are some debate on this, but many historians believe that probably it was built at the time when Jerusalem or Baitul Muqaddas was the Qibla. So you understand, Baitul Muqaddas was Qibla for very few months, and probably it was built. But there is some debate on this. I'm not going into that debate, but I'm just trying to point out that both of these are 7th century mosques. And the name of this mosque, actually, Garwada in local language means outsider or foreigner. So probably, as I said, these are port towns. So they were built for Arab traders who were in contact. This mosque story is very interesting. It is related to, according to local legends, we know the incident of the moon splitting event, which is very important in the history of Islam. According to local legends, the local Hindu king, Cheraman, saw that moon splitting. And when he got to know more about this from the Arab traders, he actually, according to the legends, as I say, it's not like old texts do not mention it so much, but according to local legends, and which have been now documented, is that he actually visited Arabia and met Prophet. Although he couldn't come back, according to legends, he's buried in in what is now Oman, Yemen, I think, if I'm not wrong, Oman or Yemen, but yes, Oman, Salah, in Salah. He's buried there, but he sent his representatives, and this is when this mosque was built. It was given by his son, who became the next king, and that's how slowly they were giving free rights to, in this state of the Malabar region, Muslims were given right to practice and propagate their religion. Now, I mention and elaborate a bit about both these mosques because it kind of dismantles the general narrative about Muslims coming to India as invaders. Now, when we talk about invaders, we generally mean outsiders coming to India, and I'm putting it in quotes because the Hindu concept of Akhand Bharat, when they talk about it, it includes almost all of Java and Peninsula on this side to large part of Afghanistan. So what is now Afghanistan? Now, if Afghanistan is part of Akhand Bharat or undivided India, then how come rulers who came from that part, from Ghazni, were outsiders? They were technically from the same geographical land. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. So this concept of outsiders, who is an outsider and who is a native, is also something that we need to debate. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is, otherwise, of course, Muslims, in North India, as I mentioned, 12th, 13th century, they established the Delhi Sultanate. And then, in 16th century, Mughals, as we know, or Timurid, Babur established the empire, who ruled till 17th, 18th century, before British came and established their colonies in India, and other European forces conquered most of the Asia, as colonies. So I'm not going into details of those history, but I just want to highlight and point some of the events from those history to buttress my point. So from 12th century till 18th century, 17th, 18th century, Muslims were ruling large parts of, I forgot to put the map of India, of the then 16th century, but you can understand that Mughal Empire included most of what is now Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan. And of course, some parts of Afghanistan as well. Most of, I say, because some portions in South India were still under local Hindu rulers. And there were, now this concept of Mughals ruling or Muslim empire, as we say, that Middle Age was ruled by Muslims in India, is also very problematic concept, because when Muslims were ruling, when these Mughals were ruling, they had sort of alliances with Rajputs and with other local Hindu and other communities, and they were ruling in alliances. We know there are instances of Mughal emperors marrying local Rajput kings. Some of you might have heard about Akbar, the great Mughal emperor. He married a Rajput princess. Then, in fact, the son born out of this marriage became the next king, Jahangir. And Jahangir himself also married, and again, and subsequently there have been several other Mughal and other Muslim rulers who married Rajputs and other Hindu princes. Many important positions in during those rule, from army generals to ministers, several ministers were actually Rajputs and other community members, for other Hindus. So it was kind of an alliance government. It was not clearly a Muslim outrightly, say Muslim rule or Muslim empire, so to say. Many of in fact, some of you might have heard about Aurangzeb, another Mughal emperor. Now, I mentioned about good Muslim, bad Muslim concept. Now, good Muslim, bad Muslim is often used between Akbar and Aurangzeb, the two great Mughal emperors. Akbar in Indian context is often presented as a ruler who was tolerant towards Hindu culture, and not just Hindu culture, towards almost all. Like he, in fact, started this something called Sule Kul, where it was kind of you can say a salad bowl of all religions. He invited Parsi, Zoroastrian scholars, Christian scholars to his court, other besides, of course, Hindus and Jains and Christians and others. And he was quite influenced by these different, and he in fact even banned poll tax, jizya, which was imposed on some Hindu communities, and also there were several other practices. So Akbar is often presented as someone who was very tolerant and secular, in contrast to, say, Aurangzeb, who was orthodox and conservative. Now, I'm not going into, I'm not trying to defend that Aurangzeb was not conservative or not orthodox, but in different contexts, what I'm trying to say is how these rulers had, according to the context of the time, they ruled. And for example, although Aurangzeb, so to say, was more orthodox compared to his predecessors, but during his time, this was the largest empire that Aurangzeb's had. The Mughal Empire was at its peak during his time, and it's after his death that slowly the downfall begins. And now Aurangzeb had the largest number of Mansabdars, Hindu Mansabdars, Rajput, Sikhs, and others. They were so. Marathas and several other communities. So the largest number of non-Muslim Mansabdars were at the time of Aurangzeb, who is otherwise believed to be anti-Hindu in many sense. And some of you who follow news might have heard about Gyanvapi Mosque, the mosque which now Hindu right-wing claim should be converted into temple. There are cases now pending in the court that temple was demolished at the time of the Aurangzeb. There are different versions to why that was demolished and why it was converted into mosque, but it's a fact. No one is denying that no temple was demolished in those time. It's a fact in history that temples were demolished. But what we need to understand is that's how this system was at that time. So when Hindu rulers also invaded, for example, when Marathas invaded Bengal, okay, they would demolish temple and take the deity to their own capital. And now this we need to understand. Some of you who have political science background might have read or at least heard about the term divine right, of like how states are formed and how monarchs, kings are God's representative on the earth. Okay, so in ancient time and till medieval time, in fact, we didn't have this social contract based on, say, democratic social contracts. So the monarchs were supposed to be king's representatives. So the gods or the representative of the monarch, when say another empire was established, that king would want to establish their authority through their quote unquote God. And so this demolition of one temple to re-establish another temple is something which has been going on in history, history. This is not to, we know about how churches, or in fact, there are places where earlier ancient temples existed, and then when Christians came, they built church over there. And we know in Spain how churches were converted into mosques, and how mosques were again reconverted into churches when Christians started ruling. So these have been part of history. This is not to justify the demolition of temple or church or mosque, but to put things in context of how the world in those times operated in a different system. And history writing or history reading is all about understanding those contexts. This is just for the slight relief from the serious stuff I'm talking. I'm sure some of you recognize this monument. This is Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal is one of the monument built by Shah Jahan, actually, son of one Mughal emperor, in memory of his wife. And these are some other structures. For those of you who don't know, this is Qutub Minar, the first mosque built in Delhi. The minaret of that, this still exists there in this shape. This is in Hyderabad, it's called Char Minar. This is Humayun Tomb in Delhi, and this is Red Fort again in Delhi. Now these are just some of the Mughal structure. The reason I put it here, because I wanted to make another point, that because Muslims were ruling, Mughals were in, remember the concept I said, the idea of the ruling class. So because during this period, the medieval period, Islamicate culture, as we call it, Islamicate culture, Persianate Islamicate culture was the dominant force. Okay, we have a saying in Urdu, or kind of a couplet, not couplet, but like kind of a saying, adage, that हाथ आरसी को आरसी क्या और पढ़े लिखे को फारसी क्या. The last line is important here, that for educated people, what is Farsi? As in, if you are educated enough, it implies that if you are educated enough, you will know Farsi. If you are a learned person, that means you know Persian. That's because Persian was the language of court. Persian was the language of literature, and so Islamicate culture influenced Indian lives to a great extent. I would just want to give some examples. For example, some of you might have heard about the name of the Home Minister of India, the current Home Minister, who is, by the way, from the right-wing Hindutva party, right-wing Hindu party. His name is Amit Shah. Now, the Shah word, some of you might have heard, is Persian, which means king. Similarly, there are several other names, several other titles, which comes from a mix of, say, which are Hindu titles, like Hindus are given this. For example, Majumdar in my state, in Bengal, Majumdar is a very common title. Majumdar of Hindus, by the way, and Majumdar comes from the Arabic word Majuma, which means collection, and the Persian suffix dar. So they were basically collection record keepers in Mughal courts, and so this was more like a title given to them during Mughal time, and this has now become kind of surnames for communities. And similarly, I can go on in giving several examples. I would like to quote Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, who one of the foremost freedom fighters, who later became minister in the independent Indian government. In fact, the first education minister of India. In 1940, in the presidential address of the Congress, he said, Islam has now as great a claim on the soil of India as Hinduism. If Hinduism has been the religion of the people here for several thousand years, Islam has also been their religion for 1,000 years now. And as I said, he's talking in 1940, so almost like 1,000 years. Just as a Hindu can say with pride that he is an Indian and follow Hinduism, so also we can say with equal pride that we are Indians and we follow Islam. So this was Maulana Azad in 1940, but 1947, when the British, at the time of when the British left, India was finally partitioned between then India and Pakistan, and now we have India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Pakistan was again divided into Pakistan and Bangladesh. So some of you might be aware about it. Now, coming to present, that was past. Now present, we Muslims who were left in India, so Pakistan was created for Muslims of South Asia, but Muslims who stayed, they believed in what we know as Mushtarka Qawmiyat or composite nationalism. So it's very interesting that many secular Muslim leaders of the time, for example, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who was not really known to be a practicing Muslim, and several others, of course. There was, of course, Maulana Maududi and Iqbal and others, but primarily educated, Western educated and others, Muslims championed the cause of Pakistan. On the other hand, Jamiat-e-Ulama Hind, is still one of the largest organization of the ulemas or the clerics as we know them. Jamiat-e-Ulama Hind championed the cause of composite nationalism. Maulana Hussain Ahmad Madni actually gave this concept, and however, there were people like, say, as I said, Iqbal and others who tried to make difference between Qawm and Ummah. Qawm and Millat. He saw them as distinct. The man I quoted earlier, Maulana Azad, however, termed it as the greatest frauds on the people to suggest that religious affinity can unite areas which are geographically, economically, linguistically, culturally different. So what Maulana Azad said that and this is what happened. So Pakistan, which is now, it's predominantly spoke Punjabi. There were Punjabis and Sindhis, and there are Pashtuns. And on the other side, what is now Bangladesh, the people primarily spoke Bengali. The culture is different, the food habits are different, the languages are different. And yet Jinnah and some others thought that because we all are Muslims, we can be one nation. Which we know in 1971, it failed because Bangladesh became a separate country. And even in what is now Pakistan, there are problems with Pashtun nationalism, with Baluch nationalism, subnational movements, and similarly in India also, in Kashmir, some of you must have heard. So this concept of dividing nation based on this concept of nationality with which I began, that how, so somewhere I think not just Muslims, but people in the post-colonial world, people in what we know as global South or broadly East, need to challenge this concept of nation also, because this is the Westphalian system of a state to some degree may be applicable to nation states, like in Europe, like France, Sweden, small country, nation states. We are not nation states. We are states with multiple nationalities. Country like India, we have over 20 official languages. I don't understand even one word of Tamil Nadu. Not even like maybe one or two words because of songs and because one of my sister-in-law is from Chennai. But otherwise, like say, there are so many differences in language, in culture, even within Hindu religion and practices. There are many practices. For example, there are some Hindus, I'm sure people in Indonesia, you might be familiar. There are some Hindus who are Shaivite and there are others who are Vaishnava. Now, this is not just about religion practice. Shaivites eat meat. Vaishnavas don't eat meat, and meat is a very contentious issue in our country because beef, because Hindus consider cow to be holy, and Muslims eat beef also, and this becomes often the issue. So what I'm trying to say is that how there are so much of differences. Now, this majority minority, this debate became predominant. So this is where I come back to Orientalism and Reorientalism and what I termed as Hindu Orientalism. Now, what happened was when So I told you about Islamicate culture. I told you about how narratives during medieval time were different. Then what happened? Then British came. Uh, and we know about Orientalism, we know about colonialism and how they disrupted the system. But the another point which I would like to mention, and maybe with this I will end, is how once British came here, they needed a justification to rule. They came in a very small number and they wanted to rule this country. So after 1857, in fact, after 1757, it's once they started ruling formally, they were no more a trading company. East India Company was transformed into a government. They needed justification. That's when literature production happened. That's when all these Orientalist scholars start coming, all these officers who started writing books about India. And this binary of Hindu Muslims as different, that they are outsiders, they needed a justification. So they tried to enforce the idea that Muslims are outsiders who are ruling you, who are ruling on you. When I say you, I mean here the Indians, the Hindu majority. So they tried to convince the Hindu majority that these minorities came from outside and they are ruling on you by force. They demolished your temples, they forcefully converted you, and they did all sorts of bad things to you. And so we have come here to free you, to liberate you, and to give you back the power. Now, this is something, this happened through decades of literature productions. Okay, and they were eventually successful when this new generation of Indian elites were started coming. People like, so there is this Bangla text book in Bengali, Anand Mat. It's a play, small, it's a novella, basically, a small novel. And in Anand Mat, what I told you, there is this Malech, as Muslims are referred to. They are the rulers. And so there is this rebellion of sannyasis and swamis. And they drive the Malech out, but they see the Britishers coming. And when the Britishers are coming, this young rebel, he gets agitated. But then the elder Swami, he convinces him, no, we are at the moment not ready to rule our country. We are divided based on language and so many other differences. So these people are kind of guardian to us. They will stay here, protect us, establish a system, and then the power will be handed. And that power was transferred in 1947, we all know. So the Hindu Orientalism, what it does is it's India's liberalism. It's the product of Western liberalism, the child of enlightenment, and it just borrowed all these Orientalizing ideas we know about, the racist concept. So where Muslims are seen as like, we know, I'm not going into details of how West saw Muslims, we all know about it. And so Hindus kind of imbibed it. And why emphasize on this? Because today when we see TV debates or we read newspapers, the debates almost every day in India is about some fatwa, alleged fatwa given by someone, the triple talaq issue, the hijab issue. We know in Iran protests are happening. You know, in one Indian state, Muslim girls have been barred from wearing hijab when they come to school and universities, on the pretext that this is not part of the uniform, this is a religious dress. And then there are all those concept debate about how it is oppressive and how we need to liberate the women, the same way Americans come to excuse me, liberate women in, say, Afghanistan or Iraq. Now then there is something concept, I don't know if you ever heard this concept, love jihad. Now this is again some sort of fantastic theory, I can say, of Hindu right wing, where they keep emphasizing that the Muslim youth, they are paid by local mosque, they are brainwashed to to lure girls as if the women have no agency of their own. By the way, I've just add here that because Hindus and Muslims live together, there are many interfaith marriages. The conservative people on both sides may have objection to this, but it is very, I won't say it is very predominant, but it do happen. Some of you might have heard about film stars like say Shah Rukh Khan. His wife is a Hindu, and they still practice, she still practices the religion. And similarly, the vice versa. You might have heard about Saif Ali Khan, like Salman Khan. Salman Khan is not married yet, but his younger sister, she married non-Muslim. Just few days ago, Amir Khan, another actor whose wife he married twice, and both his wives were non-Muslims, but his daughter just now got engaged to her boyfriend who is a non-Muslim. So the interfaith marriages do happen. I'm giving names of some famous people, but in common, like I know some of my friends have also married non-Muslim, and the vice versa. I know people who have married, like say, it's not just Hindu Muslim boy marrying non-Muslim girl, but also vice versa happen. I mean, Hindu men marrying Muslim women sometimes. Okay, there might be conservative people who would have objection to this, but it do happen. But why I'm mentioning about this, because among the Hindu right-wing ecosystem, there is one of the propaganda is that Muslim youth are given money, they are given training. This is kind of one form of terrorism, one form of jihad that they do, is that they lure Hindu women, and then once they fall in love, and then convince them to convert for marriage, because a Muslim usually would not marry unless you accept Islam. And the last term, Mia Bhai ki daring, it means the bravery of the Muslim. Why I put this? Because this is something which have been imbibed. Like Muslims have been time and again, they were told, oh, they are very brave. They are kind of rowdy, not just brave, but rowdy, ruffian kind. That's the image that Muslim have been, not just it has been imposed on them, and Muslims have imbibed them as well. Now, amidst all this, the past and the present, I told you the future challenges. What are the possibilities? Just last night, I was talking to a historian professor at Aligarh Muslim University, and we were discussing about the current situation of Muslims and the challenges. And one of the things, in fact, this was his suggestion, that eventually Muslims need to come to terms. You know, in India, I didn't mention about how we have many ethnic pogroms, like you might have heard about some of them. You know, Babri Masjid was demolished in 1992, and then there were widespread Muslim pogroms. In 2002, in Gujarat, there was a pogrom of Muslim. Just very recently, in 2020, in the state capital, in fact, when President Trump was in India, pogrom started in the national capital, not state capital, I mean national capital, in Delhi, in parts of Delhi, and several Muslims were killed. And there are hundreds of Muslim youth who are on the pretext of terror charges and all, they are still in jail. So these things keep happening. So what will happen? These are being done to force Muslim to accept that now Hindus are in majority. So one of the concept of the Hindu right wing is they want to build the Hindu Rashtra or Hindu nation. Okay, and so in that Hindu nations, of course, the Muslims are almost like 20%, 17% of the population, and you know we are a huge country. So of course these Muslims are not going to be thrown out, but they need to accept, this is their agenda, that they need to accept the second class, like this is a Hindu Rashtra, this is like something like Israel. Okay, we take a lot of lessons from Israel, in fact. So we may be a democracy, but we are what is called as ethnic democracy. That's what Hindu Rashtra is all about, that you become an ethnic democracy where Hindu majority or majoritarian democracy, you can call it for your understanding, where Hindus will have the first right on the resources, and Muslims, you are allowed to live, but accept that you are a minority. Don't try to become equal citizen. So something like that, that is the agenda. And this is not a secret agenda, by the way. This is openly their leaders propagate. The other fear is that there might be some widespread backlash between, there might be some kind of pogrom or riots. And so in short, the future do not seem very bright, at least in near future. Now, I may sound very bleak, and so I wanted to end on a positive note. This is from Surah Anfal, chapter 8, verse 30, which the translation in English, and this is Sahih International Translation, is that, and remember, when those who disbelieved plotted against you to restrain you or to kill you, kill you or evict you. That is from evict you from Makkah, and Professor earlier mentioned about it. But they plan, and Allah plans, and Allah is the best planners. Ameen. Thank you so much for listening to me. If there are some points or questions, maybe we can come back. But I think I have overtaken my time. So once again, thank you so much, and thanks to Dr. Nyong for giving me this opportunity.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Reyes, for very, very well presentation. It was so insightful, as well as a deep analysis. And of course, beautiful closing of presentation with Alan Fal. Thank you. Dr. Reyes notified that binary conception of majority and minority as a modern construct. They expose many concepts and historical experiences related to make our understanding more comprehensive about minority, particularly in the post-truth era where emotion so matters. He reminded us that Islam in India has begun from the very early era of Islam. We saw evidence at some 7th century mosques at Gujarat and Kerala or Malabar. From his presentation, we are convinced that Islam and Muslim have contributed a lot in the development of Indian culture and civilization. However, he said that a general narrative about the coming of Muslim in India as invaders remains in certain way, and recent challenges and abuses against Muslims in India also still occur and possibly will still happen in the coming days. And he saw that the debate on majority, minority could relate to the intellectual heritage of Hindu Orientalism, in the paradox sense that India people are so diverse from ancient time. And furthermore, there were long record and practices of interfaith interaction peacefully among Indian people, and even marriages in everyday lives of them. So I think the participants will have many questions to discuss further this lecture, but please be patient. You can text your question through chat box, or you can ask directly in the session of discussion. We still have one speaker. We are so lucky having him this morning, because we know that he is now so busy as one of the chairmen within Badan Riset and Inovasi Nasional. Now we invite Professor Najib to give his lecture. Prof. Najib, the forum is now yours.
Thank you, Dr. Nyong Santoso. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Very good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Rector, Dean, organizer, and also, of course, Dr. Nyong Santoso, who have me here, who invited me to come to join this very wonderful, very important discussion on the updating historical narratives of Muslim minority, past, present, and future. I would like to share my PowerPoint. Wait a minute. Hopefully you can see my PowerPoint. Can you see it, Mas Nyong?
Yes,
you do?
We have it. Yeah, we have it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So the title of my presentation is just a bit changing from the title of the conference in general. It's like researching religious minorities in Indonesia and the Malay world. I would like to begin actually for this for this discussion by quoting and also referring to the idea of two important scholars. One is from Singapore and also Malaysia, Khairuddin Al-Junaid, professor at an US university, and the second is our teacher, Professor Azumardi Azra, who passed away a week ago in I think Sunday, 18 September 2022. So out of respect to our Professor Azumardi Azra, I will discuss one of his last article, Kebangkitan Peradaban Memperkuat Optimisme Muslim Asia Tenggara. And then the one from Khairuddin Al-Junaid is Cosmopolitan Islam in Southeast Asia. So basically, we can see that Al-Junaid, I will show you the cover of the book. This one is the book, Muslim Cosmopolitanism, Southeast Asian Islam in Comparative Perspective. Basically, Al-Junaid's grounded theory on everyday forms of mutual coexistence among Muslim and non-Muslims. So in one way, similar to Professor Azra, he has an optimistic view about the religious diversity, coexistence, and also tolerance in Southeast Asia, based on his research in several places like Indonesia, Jakarta, and then Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and then also Singapore, Brunei, Darussalam, where he saw that many Muslim, many people in those countries, in Southeast Asian countries, actually are already adopting what is called as cosmopolitanism by living together with different people in harmony. So they can tolerate each other living there, living in society, and giving them rights to believe and practice of their religions. So in market, in mosque, in hospitals, in school, that we can see the coexistence and cosmopolitanism of Islam. And also from Professor Azra, we always see the optimistic view, partly based on historical cycle, on the decline of Western civilization, and conflict in West Asia and North Africa, that the future of Islam is in Southeast Asia, that the model of tolerance and religious harmony is not, sorry, my brother from India, is not in South Asia, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, but it is in Southeast Asia like Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, Brunei, Darussalam. So this one is like the following the prophecy of Fazlur Rahman, like in 1980s, that the future of Islam is either in Turkey or in Indonesia. So Professor Azumardi Azra is known as what we call it in bahasa Indonesia, juru bicara Islam Indonesia di dunia Barat, or the spokesperson of Indonesian Islam in Western world, and also the spokesperson of like Islamic tolerance of Southeast Asia, something like that. Then the next part of my presentation would be like bringing those optimism partly to the phenomena in several cities, several places in Southeast Asia, and I want to problematize the idea of cosmopolitan Islam promoted by Al-Junaid and Azra. So this one is the article by Professor Azra that actually he would like to present in Malaysia by the invitation of Dr. Anwar Ibrahim and ABIM, Angkatan Belia Islam Malaysia. He should actually be presenting this paper on 18 or 17 September, but he passed away on 18 September. And this one is very interesting. And this one is in line with his idea that the future of Islam is not in other country, but it is in Southeast Asia. So as you can see here, the title is the Kebangkitan Peradaban Memperkuat Optimisme Muslim Asia Tenggara. This my article, this one that just published yesterday, let me show you. Is actually Prizes and Respect obituary to Professor Azra, but there is a small part in that one that trying to put my position in regard to the idea of Pak Zumardi Azra's cosmopolitan Islam and the future of Islam in Indonesia. I give a note over there that as long as the issue of religious minorities still exists, either systematically or sporadically in Indonesia or other countries, so we can see that what we call as our tolerance, religious coexistence is still not ideal. So I wrote there, bagi saya selama persoalan minoritas masih bermunculan, selama isu Syiah dan Ahmadiyah belum terselesaikan, maka masih banyak pekerjaan yang harus dilakukan masyarakat dan pemerintah Indonesia. Selama persoalan Syiah Sampang dan Ahmadiyah Transisu dan kasus-kasus minoritas lain belum terselesaikan, maka keberagamaan kita tak bisa disebut sebagai ideal. When we refer to Pak Azra, the model of Islam in Southeast Asia as a pinnacle of a form of tolerant Islam perhaps is not really in the pinnacle yet. We still need to struggle to do that one, but we have also optimism that we can achieve that one. So because the title of this seminar is updating historical narrative, so we need to talk about the reality in the society and discussing what is the ideal form of the position of minority groups in our society. So I will divide my presentation and discussion and also characteristic and also category of minorities into three groups. The first one is diversity within Islam. So as you can see here, for instance, from the study of Jeremy Menchik and also other scholars, we can see that the issue of Ahmadiyya and Shia, this one is also perhaps applies in the context in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, our brother. I forgot the name. Sorry. Yes, our brother. Yes, I think this one also applies in Pakistan and India. That the issue of Shia and Ahmadiyya is the litmus test, whether we are a tolerant group, whether we are respecting diversity in our society, whether we are like giving rights to practice and believe for all believer, whether we are like having the right to ask religious other to tolerate us. This one is also testing whether we are also tolerating other group in our society. So as said by Menchik, that Ahmadiyya, it would seems marks the boundary of Indonesian much lauded generally tolerant brand of Islam. The campaign against Ahmadiyya is part of a broader effort by civil society and the state to constitute the nation through belief in God. So this one is the test of us, whether we are tolerant of whether the minority group is provided a good space, a good right in our society or not. One of the tests is the issue of Ahmadiyya and Shiite community. As you can see here, here is number of plight on the right of minorities in Southeast Asia. On the top left, we can see this one is a mosque of Ahmadi in Thailand. And then the right one, we can see top right. This one is Ahmadi Mosque in Malaysia. I took the picture by myself. Qadiani bukan agama Islam. So this one is like the term that commonly adopted by Malaysian community. And even we can see that mosque, there is no name over there because this one is forbidden. And the bottom left, this one is a mosque in Singapore, Masjid Toha. It seems, if we are comparing this one to the case in Thailand and Malaysia, the right plight and what you call it of the Ahmadiyya community in Singapore is still better. And the right one, bottom right, this one is a mosque of Ahmadiyya in Depok, in Depok, not Jakarta, in Depok, Indonesia, West Java, Indonesia. So we can see how they still difficult to get the right to believe and practice in Muslim communities. So it seems we are feeling like a bit shy asking like to Indian government to give a right to Muslim if we are not giving the right to other Muslim either. So this one is a test for us also, whether we are applying and adopting a tolerant to other group while we are asking to dominant group in certain society to give us a tolerant and harmony. And this one is also a mosque. I remember exactly the name because this is similar to my name, the Mosque of Burhani. This one in the middle, in the downtown of Singapore, belong to the Shiite, if I'm not mistaken, Ismaili or something like that. And only businessmen like seller of gold and also rich people who live in Singapore going to this Shiite mosque. And they have a bit different way of practicing Islam, but this one is also part of the Muslim community. And we can, if we go back to the history and also to the map of the Islam in general, we can see here, I mean, this is not an update, but this one is a historical part that we can see there are several groups of Muslim community, and perhaps sometimes we are only in some part of the Muslim, only accepting Sunni as part of the Muslim, and even in certain part of Muslim community, only accepting a certain group of Islam, excluding other organization of Islam from the context of a definition of Islam. And there is also Shiite community, Khawarij, and then we can see also here several number of tariqah, Sufism in Islam that sometimes some Muslim community also exclude them from the true Islam or something like that, from the quote and quote what they define as true Islam. So they blame that the practice of tariqah is against Islam. This one is like practicing religious practices from Hinduism or Buddhism or some remnant of indigenous religion and something like that. So that's why this one is not part of Islam. So this one is also a test of our tolerance and religiosity and our treatment towards minorities. And we can see here also in Middle East, there are a number of issues like related to the Druze, Yazidi, and then Alawi, and also some other groups. And we can see, for instance, in like Syria and also in Lebanon, like Druze is not considered by some part of the society as part of the Muslim group. And this one is also chart. It's not chart, but like tree, like not family tree, but tree of religion, of religious branches of Islam, something like that. Then we can see a number of groups that sometimes by number of Muslims excluded from the category of Islam in society. And if we are going back to the history, and when we are trying to study about comparative religion in Islam, we can see that there were actually a number of study of Islam, like Al-Milal wa Nihal by Muhammad Shahrustani, and then also Al-Faraq Bain Al-Firaq by Abi Mansur Al-Qahir Al-Baghdadi, and then Al-Fasl Fil Al-Milal wal Ahwa wa An-Nihal by Ibn Hazm. And also recently, perhaps we can see that Harun Nasution, well, not recently, but in 1980s, 1970s, 1990s, This book is very influential, teologi Islam, aliran-aliran sejarah, analisa, perbandingan. What is missing from those academic books and also historical book on comparative religion and comparative religious group or something like that, a firqah religious group, is that we are missing in this one studies of, like in, for instance, Teologi Islam from Pak Harun Nasution. We are sometimes comparing groups of Islam which right now no longer exist, like Mu'tazilah, Jabariyah, and then Qadariyah and something like that. Whatever you say about these groups, they cannot defend it. Whatever you say about Mu'tazilah, for instance, or Qadariyah or Jabariyah or something like that, they cannot defend themselves because they no longer exist. But what is missing from Harun Nasution book is a comparative theology within Islam, like comparing between like NU Sunnism with like Ismaili Shiism, and also with, for instance, what you call it, like Druze, and also with Ahmadiyya and something like that. We are only comparing with something dead, which is not really fair, actually, for me. If we are trying to compare to study, and then there is other group of Islam that still exists, perhaps we need to include that one in the comparative study of theology within Islam. And here are a number of religious groups within Islam that sometimes considered as outside Islam, like Yazidi, Druze, Ahmadi, Alawi, and then Ismaili. And perhaps some of our students of comparative religion in Islam are not aware of this symbol. If once I asked them which one the Druze symbol, and then they like confused which one the Ismaili symbol. Some people still confused which one from this 5 symbol that represent like Yazidi group, Druze group, Ahmadi group, and Alawi group, and also Ismaili group. This one is one of the weakness of us as Muslim to understand even our Muslim community, the diversity within Islam. So in this context, I want to say that Malayness or Indonesianness is right now is identical with Islam, but there are various versions of Islam in Indonesia and the Malay world. What is needed is not only mutual coexistence among Muslims and non-Muslims that need to be studied and also to be implemented, but also coexistence among diverse Muslim groups. The followers of non-Orthodox Muslim, like Ahmadiyya and Shia, are small, but the treatment to that community will determine our what is called as cosmopolitanism. There were a number of studies, one of them from PPIM UIN Jakarta, toward a student in UIN Jakarta, UIN Yogyakarta, and UIN Bandung. And the result is our internal empathy is less than our external empathy. We can live together in harmony with Christian people, we can live harmony with Hindu people, but it seems we are not accepting our brother of Muslim community from different groups. So this one a problem of us. It's not only with non-Muslim, but also with a Muslim religious group from different like organization or sect or something like that. And one of example of that one, I think this one is an important book, of course, Kristen Muhammadiyah. This one is a study of Muslim minorities in non-Muslim majorities in East Indonesia, where there are a number of universities, Muhammadiyah University and school, where 70% of the students non-Muslim, and only 30% or less are Muslim. The point that I want to show here is not like only praising this book, but also critiquing this book. The test of our tolerance is not when we are minority, like in Papua or Timur, Nusa Tenggara Timur, East Nusa Tenggara, or Molucas or something like that. So the test of our tolerance is not when we are minority, But when we are majority, like in Java or other places, if you are minority, there is limited option for you to survive. The way to survive, to live, is to tolerate and live in harmony with dominant group. Just like the case in Papua or Nusa Tenggara Timur or Molucas, Ambon, and something like that. But if you are in majority position, like in Jakarta, in Java, in Surabaya, something like that, and you cannot implement tolerant religious life, then you are actually not really tolerant. So that's one is the point that I want to say, referring to this book, that the test of tolerance is not when we are in the position of minority, like our brother Riaz in India, and it seems they are very tolerant, but that is not the test. But when you are becoming majority, like in Pakistan, whether you are accepting like Ahmadiyya, Shia, and other group, then that is one of the tests of the whether you are tolerant or not. And then this is the second point of the what we call as minority group. This is we call it like indigenous religion and beliefs. So beside diversity within Islam, Indonesia and the Malay world have hundreds of indigenous religions. And sometimes they are pejoratively called as paganism, animism, and dynamism. A term that not accepted by them. This one is like applied by the dominant group to denigrate the name of this indigenous religion. Once I was asked people in Sumatra, religious leaders, what do you mean? What is your understanding? What is your view on like Parmalim? And then he said, they said that they are worshipper of fire, worshipper of ghosts, worshipper of something like that. They are uncivilized, something like that. And this one, I mean, part of what we call as not accepting the existence of like minority groups in society. In Malaysia, we have also Momolianism, like this one in Sabah, and number of religious minorities there. Particularly in Borneo provinces or states. And this one is Parmalim community in Sumatra Utara, North Sumatra. And this one is in Toraja, in village Toraja, where we can see a living zombie or something like that, and like putting the dead person not in the grave, but in the like mountain, something like this one, and then they will bury together sometimes, or sometimes they put it in the house and then live together with the zombie and something like that. And this one is part of the religion in our society, and this one is Sabta Dharma in Yogyakarta, and they have a big like worship house over there that also sometimes in several places still difficult to have a right to believe and practice and something like that. So these communities, they have become the target of minorities considered not having religion or not yet adopting any religion. They are seen as having a great potential for economic development, like using them as part of the promotion, cultural promotion and tourism and something like that, particularly for cultural and religious tourism. However, in the process of commodifying local culture, they are uprooted from supernatural magic and belief system that has become the backbone and raison d'etre of that culture. So indigenous religion and their culture richness are often neglected or overshadowed by mainstream religion. So that's so the third one. This one is non-Muslim minorities, non-mainstream. It's blocked by the black one. This one I'm not really clear. A non-Muslim and new religious movement. So there are a number of groups that also similar position. I mean that not really accepted as with the same position as the mainstream religion, like Judaism, Baha'i, Sikh, Jainism, Tao, and now we even see followers of new religious movement like Sai Baba, Anan Ashram, Bahma Kumaris, Lia Eden, and Gavatar become like discriminated in certain societies. So in conclusion, we seeing Malaysia and Malaysians with Islam, let alone only Sunni Islam, let alone, for instance, Muhammadiyah Islam or NO Islam, seems to be politicizing religion. Although Islam is the religion of the majority of people in Indonesia and the Malay world, we need not forget about the existence of religious minorities in this area. I think that's all from me. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Prof. Najib. It is so astonishing and robust talk. Okay, Prof. Najib had begun with elaborating Khairuddin al-Junaid notion on cosmopolitan Islam, and also Azumardi Azra notion on the awakening of civilization in Southeast Asia. He tried to bring optimism, as done previously by Fazlur Rahman, who prophesied that the future of Islam will rise from Southeast Asia. I mean, however, Prof. Najib quote Prof. Azra that we probably might not yet come to the pinnacle of tolerance. Yeah? We have to struggle for achieving it. And I agree with him. So he aimed at the litmus test of whether we are a tolerant nation or not with the evidence of how we are able to treat some minority groups within Muslims, particularly Shia or Ahmadiyya. And interestingly, according to field research, that there is a prominent weakness within Muslim in understanding their own diversity. Yeah? That it is said that our internal empathy is less than our external sympathy. Interesting. And Prof. Najib also gave a wide explanation about how majority-minority coexist within interfaith relation between Islam and other religions, including indigenous religions. And when he criticized the book of Christian Muhammadiyah or Chrismuha, I quote a very, very interesting quotation. I will quote verbatim. The test of our tolerance is not only when we are minority, but when we are majority. Okay, thank you, Professor Najib. Now, dear all participants, if any one of you has any question or more points to raise, please notify us by clicking, hand raise button, or you can write it down in the chat box. And I'm sure that Professor Najib, Dr. Reyes, and Dr. Khodafi would be pleased to answer you. Please mention your name and your institution and make your question clear and concise. Thank you. Okay, we open the session of discussion. Okay, anyone? Silakan, mungkin ada yang bertanya, silakan bisa bahasa Indonesia, tidak apa-apa. Okay. So I think the presentation is so clear and so insightful. So there is no yet question raised in this session. Probably I can begin with some question to the three panelists. Particularly to the Mr. Khadafi, related to the policy of UINSA as a university, particularly the Faculty of Arts and Humanities. Did our institution have, the specific program or approaches to teach and train the student in dealing with this kind of issues, and to have sensitivity or ability to avoid attitudes or practices of discrimination toward minorities? So this is I think the issue that can be tackled or respond in this occasion. And the next one is to Mr. Rias. I think very, very interesting talk. One thing come to my mind when listening to your presentation. I remember to the book of Kyati Joshi that we learned together in the Seattle. That the book is entitled "White Christian Privilege." She told stories that prejudice, discrimination, or even sometimes violence experienced by minorities, including Muslim in US. So I want to make such a comparison between the experience of Muslim in India and Muslim in America, United States of America. Do majority Hindu in India also have such kind of privilege in comparison to those white Christian have in US? So the book is White Christian Privilege, authored by Kyati Joshi. And I think Kyati Joshi was Indian American. That's the point that I will offer to discuss it further in this session, and we want the response from Dr. Reyes. And to Professor Najib, there is an issue, particularly related to the brain, where are you? Where you are now within this board? I think that Indonesia hasn't free from discrimination or abuses against religious minorities. So according to you, what the government of Indonesia should or must do to tackle this problem and to minimize its negative impacts over society in the future? So that three questions to begin the session of discussion while we are waiting the response and question from the other audience. Okay, the first chance we give to Dr. Khadafi to respond it.
Okay, thank you, Pak Nyong. Firstly, I was to thank for Professor Najib and Professor Muhammad Rias. Saya senang sekali tadi Professor Najib is very clear and brief to deliver issues about Muslim minority, and I am apologies because Mr. Nyong itu messaged me 2 days ago, and I don't have a time to prepare material with the good reference and good fact in this phenomena, but refer to Pak Nyong, pertanyaan Pak Nyong tadi about the kebijakan in our campus, ya. Apakah kampus kita itu punya kebijakan tentang isu tentang minority ini, dan bagaimana mahasiswa kita harus bersikap terhadap fenomena ini. Saya senang 2 days ago our rector Profesor Ahmad Muzaki itu ditunjuk sebagai member of tim penyelesaian non-judicial pelanggaran hak asasi manusia yang berat di masa lalu. Nah, tentu kita berharap we have opportunity to make a new regulation for our student, for our institution, for our lecture, to make some program, of course, related with this issue, and of course, in the future, we want to push our lecture to have what the meaning of focusing on research in this area because it's very important. And even I read many articles about minority and related with the majority case. So very small researcher focusing on how to make a solution. Ya. Bagaimana para peneliti itu kemudian melahirkan semacam solusi untuk mengatasi ini. I believe we can do that. Actually, we have a great society in Indonesia. We have a big potential to make some of formula to what the meaning of mengurangi efek negatif dari fenomena Islam minority ini. In the future, I think Prof. Muzaki or our rector will will make kebijakan yang nyata untuk isu-isu itu terkait research and how we can more intensive turn off to our society and doing pendampingan, asistensi to make new paradigma about bagaimana hidup berdampingan, how to live together with the minority. I think is in the future we will make this kebijakan gitu ya. Saya kira itu Pak Nyong, terima kasih.
Thank you, Pak Khadafi, for the response. And I think it is clear now that UINSA has a willingness and also a commitment to enhance our students' understanding in addressing the issue of minority. Thank you very much. Now we give a chance for Dr. Reyes to respond our questions.
Thank you so much. So yes, as you mentioned, white Christianity privilege, or in West we have white men, like of course they have privilege. It's very similar privileges to Hindu groups. For example, there are things that Hindu journalists can get away by saying or writing about. But if you are a Muslim and you are a journalist, or you are a writer, or you are a speaker, and then you may be in trouble for saying very similar things. So there are those kind of privileges and those what we call a social capital. So that of course help them irrespective of ideology. It's always there. So we can't deny this, and they of course a lot of, especially elites, they have this privileges and advantage. We cannot deny this. I would also just like to point a few times Professor Najib gave like example from India or mentioned about India. So I just like to make 2 points here. So I agree with, so in the Indian context, yes, you are right, because it's primarily a secular country, a democratic country. And so in India, whether you are a Sunni or a Ahmadiyya or a Shia or Bora or several other communities, but in the eyes of the law, you all are minorities, you all are part of the larger Muslim community. And there are some mosques belonging to Ahmadiyya, particularly in big cities. Almost every big city have some mosque. An interesting thing I find is, but many of these mosques, like say Bora Mosque, they don't usually encourage, unless you are a tourist or something, or you have some friends, they don't really encourage Muslims from other, like say, mainstream Sunni to visit them as openly. They are also not as open to say, but like in book fair, like we have these international book fairs in different cities. I have visited one in Delhi, like several times in Delhi and in Kolkata, and two cities I can tell you, like often in book fair there are like say sections, country-wise sections and language-wise section, like Bengali book sections and Urdu, English, and similarly there is one section where it's religion. Religion and spirituality often together, and there have been occasions where I seen Jamaat Islami and a stall of Jamaat Islami and a stall of Ahmadiyya side by side or on just the opposite side. We know about the views of Jamaat Islami on say Ahmadiyyas or Qadianis, as you mentioned. So, but yes, I agree. I tend to agree with another point which you were saying, that the litmus test is in how we treat our minorities. And in Indian context, or I can say in Muslim context, in fact, at least about South Asia, that when it comes to Shias, Boras, and some other sects you mentioned, Ismail and all, I think we have come to terms with that they are part of the larger Muslim fold. We may have our differences. We may in our personal conversations say that they are not true Muslim and they will not go to heaven or whatever. But we have come to terms that okay, they will have their practices. So in India, Shias are there, Boras are there, Ismailis are there. But with Ahmadiyya, that's the litmus test. I think the true litmus test is when it comes to South Asia, it's with Ahmadiyyas. And the final point, I often say this: we Muslims talk about Sharia when we are in majority, talk about democracy and human rights when we are in minority. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reyes. Now we invite Professor Najib to give his response.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Young, for the question. What the government should do to tackle religious intolerance and discrimination in our minorities. Perhaps I would like to give like a normative answer, Mas. The normative answer perhaps consists of three things: the cultural, regulative, and pragmatic. The cultural, I mean the regulative, you know that sometimes we see that there is a tendency in our society, either intentionally or unintentionally, what you call it, making discrimination and also intolerance happen. One of the example of that one is halal industry and also Syariah banking and something like that. If we can see the case like in Singapore, I mean, the issue of halal industry and also Sharia banking, something like that, could treat non-Muslim, for instance, differently and unconsciously sometimes discriminate them. For instance, that the case in Batak, I think this one is the study by Shafiq Hasim. In Batak, previously we are, I mean, some people can mingle together during the wedding party and something like that without any concern with the issue of food, because for instance, if the Muslim people can eat only eat halal food, but with this regulation, it seems that more strict regulation in society to be implemented. And also in the case of like regulation in general, halal industry and Sharia banking, something like that, is like that we as a government providing law specifically to certain community in society, and by implication could create society segregated into groups based on religion and something like that. And then the second one related to regulation, we see that there are a number of regulations that are not what you call it, not giving or perhaps giving favoritism to certain group of society, like law on defamation, PNPS 65, classifying religion into 3 groups that perhaps for those local believer or something like that considered as unhealthy and need to be brought into healthy religion. And that's why missionaries coming to that society and something like that. So in this context, in this kind of regulation, to make sure that our society not practicing discrimination and intolerance is a bit different from the first one. That is not implementing law instead of implementing law. So not implementing the law number 1 PNPS 65 rather than implementing that one. If we are implementing that one, that means government is providing discrimination tool for discriminating a religious minority. So I remember the statement of Pak Mas Zainal Abidin Bakir. The way to protect religious minorities, one of them is not by implementing law, instead by not implementing the law. So this is a funny thing regarding regulation. And then the second one, pragmatic things in implementing tolerance and harmony in society is like erasing monuments of tolerance, like in Sampang and in where is it, in Nusa Tenggara Barat, Mataram, Transito. So what you call it, as long as the issue of there's 2 monuments, living monuments in Sampang and Sidoarjo, right, still exists, it's a bit difficult for our country to say to the world, well, we are a tolerant country or something like that. So the way, one of the simple way is erasing that kind of monument of intolerance by providing the rights of these religious minority groups. And then the third one is cultural. There are a number of issues that related to culture. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, Saturday is a family day. Ya, untuk kawan-kawan mahasiswa, untuk nanti yang punya pertanyaan bisa disampaikan melalui chatbox ya. Okay,
sorry,
Prof.
there
Continue.
was a bit disruption.
Okay.
Family issues. So the cultural, well, actually I wrote this one in my text for my promotion to professor, that the issue of culture in intolerant culture in society. That is for instance, we are not aware that we are discriminating other people. For instance, in some society, that discrimination toward Ahmadiyya is considered as part of jihad, instead of believing that that one is against the human rights or religious right of other people. And also there is also what is called as cultural, is what you call it, in several places, di mana bumi dipijak, di situ langit dijunjung, and then interpreted as that the minority must follow whatever stated, regulated by the majority, and something like that. And in reality, for instance, they cannot build worship house of worship bigger, larger, taller than Muslim masjid and something like that. They cannot have money more than Muslim. They cannot more fortunate than Muslim and something like that. So the proverb implemented as a way to discriminate the other people. And there are a number of issues related to culture that we need to tackle. And I think that's all from me. I think this needs a lot of long discussion, but in short, I think that's one. And I just aware that you are a classmate of Riaz in Seattle. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Okay, some students text me personally, so I will share this question to you, and I will read it. Firstly, is to Mr. Khadafi. Did the Department of History and Islamic Civilization include the issue of religious minorities in its curriculum? If the first question was related to the policy of UINSA institution, now more specific, did the Department of History and Islamic Civilization include the issue of religious minority in its curriculum? And then to Mr. Riaz, there are several questions. I will read them. First is, after separation between India and Pakistan, how was actually the status of Muslim minority in India? Did the separation affect them? It's so historical. Yeah. And the second, as minority within majority Hindu India, how did Indian Muslims develop and define their identity as a citizen? Are there Islamic identities provoking majority Hindu to treat them as not fully Indian? So I think it's like a question I posed to you in Seattle, that as an Indian citizen as well as Muslim who is regarded minority, how do you reconcile both identities? Are you Muslim first or then an Indian, or an Indian first and then a Muslim? Okay, two first question for posed to Mr. Reyes. And then to Mr. Najib, does BRIN offer scholarship or grants or programs for students to enhance their knowledge through researching or studying further, or to develop and train their skills? Yeah,
the answer is yes.
Yes. Okay. Another question is this. Are there upcoming threats or challenges against religious harmony in Indonesia that must be paid of attention? I think you can, return to re-explain what have you presented in previously in your presentation. Yeah. I think it will be useful for them. Okay, thank you. Now we invite Dr. Khadafi to give his response to the question.
Thank you, Banyong. Of course, we have in our curriculum, we have a minority, Muslim minority in West countries. Yeah, I think Prof. Safik Muhni is the lecturer. Yeah, and of course, actually, I want to Prof. Safik Muhni to be a speaker in this seminar, but we don't have a time because the regulation of our rector about international seminar things in the last minute before our event launch. So Pak Nyong pushed me to give this challenge to me. Of course, Pak Nyong, we have and we will improve this curriculum to be more have fokus, ya, lebih fokus lagi pada upaya-upaya how to make our student have consciousness about the issues of minority related with the majority community in Muslim or with the non-Muslim issues. Thank you, Pak Nyong.
Thank you, Pak Khadafi. I think the question is already answered very well. Now, Mr. Riaz.
So basically, I see both the questions as interrelated. So I'll try to answer as briefly as I can. So yes, things changed for Muslims who lived here, who stayed here. I would have liked to believe that Muslims who stayed here should have been in a way welcomed, because they chose the country of their ancestors and the country of their birth over a separate Muslim majority country, which was built, which was created after partition. But due to historical, I mentioned about how history was constructed. So that was one reason. And partition. So partition, there is this sense of loss among majority Hindus, that India was divided. Pakistan and Bangladesh, if you combine those, that's huge land actually. And so India was in a way, two parts of India has been, it was divided because of Muslims. And so somehow Muslims are blamed. So Jinnah become the politics of the time, the colonial politics and of the 40s was much more complicated. It was not just Muhammad Ali Jinnah or Muslim leaders who were responsible for partition. In many ways, the uncompromising stand of Congress leaders and Hindu leaders were as much responsible for partition. But somehow the blame is always on Jinnah, symbolically, and on Muslims. And that impacted their politics in the way that immediately after partition, I'm sure you are aware that there were many, we call it riots, but it was more like ethnic, pogroms, you can say. There were Hindu Muslims, so both people from all community, Hindu, Muslim, Sikhs, on different sides of the border. Lakhs of millions of them were killed actually during partition, in the immediate aftermath of the partition, and that impacted the politics of Muslims. So for example, the state I live in, Bengal, West Bengal, this was part of the larger united province of Bengal, where Muslims were in majority, and then overnight they became a minority here. Okay, so they became more passive in their politics. They were not very assertive in their politics. They just voted, and they sort of accepted the second class citizenship, so to say. Although on paper we are equal citizens, we all are citizens of a secular country. So they sort of accepted Hindu majoritarian state. And another manifestation of it was in the realm of culture. For example, I talked about Islamicate culture. For example, ghazal, Bollywood songs, qawwali, and other practices of Muslim. So the focus was more on the cultural aspect, on our biryani, on our food, on our songs, our poetry. And the religious part of it was kind of sidelined or marginalized. Okay, and Muslim were like, religion became something more of a private affair for Muslims, which was still very recently. Now, what has happened in last few years, last decade or so, post-globalization, you can say, is that Muslims, the new generation of Muslims, like people like me and people who are younger than me in their 20s, they don't have the memories of partition. They don't have their cousins who are like first cousins who went to Pakistan or to Bangladesh, and so they don't have this baggage or the guilt of partition. Okay, they consider themselves as equal citizens, and they are more assertive about their identity. They want to practice their religion as publicly as, say, others like Hindu majority is doing. And that is creating again a kind of problem in many ways, because Hindu majority see it as like they are trying to create another Pakistan. This is one allegations, like when you'll see in some pockets where Muslims are in concentration, and you see they offering namaz or prayer in, say, in hospital or in bus stand or on railway station. Okay, and then immediately there will be allegation they are trying to create another Pakistan. Okay, so so this has been there. And how do we come to terms with this Muslim as citizen in a minor, as a minority? This question, as you pointed out, whether you are a Muslim first or an Indian first. This is a question which has been posed on Muslims. In fact, there is a very interesting and very good academic paper, Can Muslim be Indian, by Gyanendra Pandey. He's a left-wing, like leftist intellectual. So very old paper, like 3 decades old paper, but very important paper. Can Muslim be Indian? Are Muslim considered Indian? Can they be Indian enough? This is a question which is always there. By the way, just to add here, this question is never asked to a Hindu. Are you an Indian first or a Hindu first? Because by extension, Hindu is an Indian. Or an, it's a question that Muslim have to come to terms with, and this is creating a lot of problem, because say RSS, the fountainhead of the right-wing Hindu party, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, they often say their ideology will say that you are Indian Muslim means you are Hindu Muslim. Like all people who are from India are actually Hindus. Okay, the Hindi word for Indians is Hindu, and so you all are Hindu actually, who just practice Islam. Okay, so you are Hindu Muslim. That's a debate which keep happening. They try to impose this identity on us, and Muslims, as I said, are trying to navigate the path and say, no, I'm as much Muslim as I'm Indian. So people like Maulana Azad or the other like Maulana Muhammad Ali Johar, they said that we belong to the 2 circles and we are proud of both. I'm Indian and I'm also a Muslim. And we are proud of both our identities. So this is a debate which is still going on. Even 75 years, we are celebrating 75th year of our independence, and this is a debate which is still continuing. In fact, since the BJP government has come back to power in 2014, this debate has become very predominant. Almost every day this debate is going on. Like say I'm speaking here, if I say something which is very strong, our Hindu colleagues would question, you are trying to you are not patriot enough, you are anti-national. So anti-national is an allegation which is put on academics, activists, journalists, whenever you speak something which is anti or criticism of the present government or the right-wing narrative. So and especially on Muslims and on liberals, this is an accusation which is often put. So yes, that's a complex path which Muslims have to navigate. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Reyes. And now we move to Professor Najib. My student texts me that they require more explanation about scholarship grant and program. That you mean yes? Okay, Prof. Najib, we invite you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I will explain that perhaps later, but I'm very interested with what was said by Brother Riaz. And we can see the feeling of minority there. And we should understand the feeling of minority in Indonesia. Brother Riaz said that he can't even say what you call it, frankly and then outspoken regarding the situation in India, because he is part of minority and something like that. There are a number of similarities between India and Indonesia. If in India Muslim is minority or minorities, in Indonesia, we are majorities, but in certain point, we are Muslim, treating non-Muslim just like Indian Hindu, treating Muslim minorities there.